Should you share your personal witness, your personal relationship with Christ? And if so, how much should you share? This week on Happy Hour. Welcome back to Happy Hour, our podcast for young adults here at the Cathedral of the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus. I'm Rick, and today I have a special guest in studio with me, someone who has yet to be on the podcast, but I think we've been talking about it for months, for sure, maybe up to even 6 months. We've been kind of going with the idea of getting him on the podcast, and I'm really excited. Jacob, thanks for joining me today on Happy Hour.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yeah. If you don't mind, maybe share with everybody who you are. Just in 30 seconds, if somebody said, Jacob, who are you? What would you tell them?
Well, my name's Jacob. I'm one of 5 kids, born in Tampa, Florida. Lived in East Tennessee for most of my life now. I am currently a student healthcare worker, and the core of my identity now is really that I'm a Christian, a Catholic. I'm finding more and more that I have some desire to tell that to people. Because it is so central to my identity.
Yeah, I would 100%. That's a great description, FYI. And that wasn't 30 seconds. So that was really good. Great description. And I couldn't have nailed it any better. Although you did catch me off guard with saying you're from Tampa, because I didn't realize that you were born in Tampa. But that's good. I lived on the other side of Florida for 11 years. But
okay, the wrong side.
Exactly. Technically the right side, I guess, if you're looking at a map. But that's okay. So coming up here to East Tennessee, how long ago was that?
06, 07.
Okay.
I was in 6th grade.
So, okay. Wow. That's quite a shift then.
Yeah. It was a good time. It was right after elementary school, right before middle school. Of course, you go through the whole, losing your friend group and finding a new one. But the friends I made in middle school stayed with me pretty much throughout all high school.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think when I did very similar thing, believe it or not, I moved from Utah to Michigan right at 6th grade, but then moved schools in Michigan from middle school to high school. Like we moved to different cities. So that was a tough transition because I didn't have any of my middle school friends with me then. And that helps a lot when you transition into high school. That helps a lot. But we're glad to have you. And we're going to just rewind a little bit to when you and I first started really having conversations about anything, which would have been when we did the Chosen Bible study, right?
Yeah, I just finished season 3, and
Ooh.
Man, the season 3 finale.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
I think it has to be my favorite episode in the whole show.
Oh, I mean, truly incredible. Now, we did a Bible study on season 1, and we do have a season 2 Bible study coming very soon. We'll release that information out shortly, but it was an interesting group. I loved our group. We had 3 different tables full of people. Our table was all dudes, and I feel like we had some really great conversations and were able to kind of unpack what we were experiencing. And the idea of our Bible study was we would come together and talk about the previous episode, and then watch the current episode and talk very briefly about that, but give it a week to unpack. We'd come back and kind of talk about it a little bit. I liked that format. It's different because I always felt like I was a week behind or a week ahead. I guess I don't remember, but I felt like I was a week off, but it kind of worked, I thought. I don't know. What were your thoughts on that?
It did. I definitely appreciated the time to digest it. And then, of course, I went and binged season 2 in like 2 days. But yeah, no, and especially, I don't know, just getting to talk about it after the fact and really like what it meant to us personally, because we all derive meaning from our experiences, from what we see, what we hear, and to be able to share your unique perspective, because your perspective is unique in the universe, and to be able to share that with someone else is really a gift.
Yeah, couldn't agree. And we had a variety of people at our table, different life experiences. And what I loved about our discussion, it seemed like everybody always had something to share. And it was different from anybody else. It was so good. It was honestly, it was great conversation.
How could it not be?
That's true. And we did eight sessions because there were 8 episodes. We're going to do the same for season 2. But throughout those 8 weeks, which would have been, I feel like it was definitely fall. And it kind of led us up to Alpha starting in January. But during those 8 weeks of The Chosen, we really got to know each other a bit more, got to share a bit more, and then hear a little bit about each other's stories. And that's really what we want to kind of share today, is a little bit of our stories in terms of our faith. Both of us have experienced being away from God. Not that God was away from us, but us being away from God. And then we've both experienced being close to God. And I'd like to hear kind of a little bit about your journey on that and where you're at now. So take me back in the Jacob time machine. Boom, 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 boom. And when do you really first remember experiencing God in any shape or form? It could have been from prayers that you would do with the family and you experienced God through that, or maybe it was something on your own, some kind of insight that you got on your own, or an event in life. Sometimes that does it as well. But if you could go back and try to remember, what's the first real experience you had with God? What would you tell people?
Well, I mean, I'm a cradle Catholic, so it's always, all the schools I've gone to have always been private Catholic schools. So it's always been a part of my life. Of course, being taught at home, Sunday school, even before, elementary school and all that. So God has always been part of my life. But of course, when you're a kid and you're learning things and you're learning how to learn things and you're learning how to understand what you're learning, sometimes it's hard to really tell, especially with God, learning how to recognize God in your life, the touch of the Holy Spirit, and the way that He speaks to you, because He doesn't speak to everyone the same.
Right.
Is a long process. So it's hard for me to say in like my childhood when I really recognized God working in my life. But I guess the first key moment was my confirmation retreat.
Oh, okay. And what age was that? Did you do confirmation in?
I was in,
because we do it in 5th grade here.
It was I believe it was my junior year of high school.
Okay, mine too.
Yeah.
Junior year of high school. Okay.
And so our class did a retreat to Eagle Rock. I don't remember where Eagle Rock is. It's here in East Tennessee somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's like a mountain cabin retreat, pretty far out there. No
full weekend one.
It was a full weekend,
okay.
And so the sad part was I got in trouble for something at school. So and I was really upset about the way they chose to punish me, because part of my punishment was I did not get to go to the first day of the confirmation retreat.
Oh no.
And I was like, the way you're going to punish me is to remove me from God in this moment. But
sometimes
anyway.
I see that though with youth group. Sometimes if somebody gets in trouble, the parent will withhold youth group from them. Kind of very similar, right? Yeah. So okay, keep going.
But anyway, it was a very emotional moment. Without getting into the personal details, I was in a pretty rough spot.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout most of high school, but particularly this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, so I gave somewhat of a testimony. There were certain people who would give speeches. So I had written out one. I had volunteered to write a speech to tell in front of everyone. And I believe it was that night. And I was struggling with something that has been bothering me for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was praying about it, and it was getting later at night. We had a late night. It wasn't a mass. It was just I guess an ecumenical service of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly what we did, but we sat on the hilltop. There were a bunch of benches out, like overlooking the like the valley, and there was a big wooden cross, and they had a fire. So late at night, we were all sitting out there, and we were singing and doing stuff. Anyway, so everyone has all gone back to their cabins at this point. It's dark, it's cold, and I'm wandering around outside, alone, looking up at the sky, not knowing what I'm doing, not knowing, basically crying out for answers. And I remember feeling, just begging God to give me something. And through just an overwhelming flood of power, I don't know how to describe it, I fell to my knees. I find when I experience God to the fullest, I don't have the strength to stand.
Yeah.
And it's happened a couple times.
Oh, wow.
And I remember because I fell to my knees on these sharp rocks and it hurt.
Oh, boy.
It cut up my knees. And I just broke down there. And, I don't recall if I got an answer in the moment, but it was a crucial turning point in me discovering where I was meant to go and what I was meant to do.
Wow.
And it took a while. And I guess if I follow the theme, after I, graduated high school, went to college, I still went to church, pretty much every Sunday during college. My friends actually made fun of me for it so I went to Coastal Carolina University over in South Carolina. It's like 10 miles from Myrtle Beach.
I think they made the NCAA tournament once.
I think they did. So their football was like D. I'm not a big sports guy, but their football was D2, and they were like, when I was there, they were in the process of punching up, and they were beating D1 teams.
Oh,
and they
wow.
were like, anyway. So I mean, it's a smaller campus. I had my bike, so I would just bike everywhere. And every Sunday I would leave, like, hanging out with my friends to go to mass on my bike, and I'd be the only one biking all the way across campus to get to the chapel, which was like at the far back end. And everyone would make fun of me as I bike over to the chapel. But after I came back from Coastal, I kind of stopped going to church. And that was kind of, I had another mini crisis there in college at Coastal. And that was kind of the start of me falling away from the faith, I guess.
Sure. Which is when a majority of people who have faith going in actually experience that crisis moment, right?
Yeah. But the interesting thing is it wasn't me going into college. It was actually after I left.
Wow. Yeah, but, that's unique.
But so I was in a dry period for a while. I started to not want to have anything to do with it, not wanting to think about it. And it wasn't so much like previously in my struggles, I would have moments where, and this is part of the discovery, I would talk to God and I would get angry at God and I would blame God for things. And I would curse God for quote unquote doing these things to me.
Right.
Or allowing these things to be done. And, at this point I'd kind of moved beyond it, and I didn't care anymore. I didn't want anything to do with it, because what was it doing for me?
Right.
And it was a long few years, a very, very painful few years, of me trying to deal with everything myself. Trying to take responsibility for everything, as you should, but bearing the weight of everything on my own. And as the normal struggles of life continue to happen, and they build up and they wear you down, and more and more and more just all gets piled on, I kept sinking without knowing it.
Sure.
It was a slow process.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a kind of a crucial moment there in August of 2021 where in the same week I lost my long-term girlfriend, I lost my job, and I didn't feel like I had enough money to pay for rent, so I felt like I was going to lose my home too.
Wow.
In the same week.
Oh,
and
that's tough.
So after that, I was searching. I entered, search for something different mode because this is not working.
Right.
And, that wasn't a quick process either. I started looking everywhere. And then one of the next jobs I had a mentor, and he was very outwardly religious. And, at first I didn't think anything of it. Over, the course of a couple months, I started to ask him more questions about him, about what he believed. And then he started trying to prod me to get me to come to church with him. Mm-hmm. He said, just, I'll get with my family. You're welcome. Come with me. And I said, okay, maybe. And the next week, well, I've got this going on. I've got work to do. I've got this and this. And eventually I did. Eventually I was like, okay, I'll make time. I'll go to this church with you. It was a non-denominational church. Kind of one of those big,
Sure. Mega church.
Yeah. Lights and
smoke machines.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great music.
Yeah. And so the thing is, music is, now I'm not a musician per se, but music is definitely one of the modes in which the Holy Spirit speaks to me. And so I'm there at this church, and I can't recall the lyrics per se, but it was one of those moments where what they were saying, what the message was, felt like it was written specifically for me. Mm-hmm. In the moment I was at, it could not have been more spot on.
Wow.
to what I needed to hear in that moment. And once again, I in the middle of this church with, I don't know how many hundreds of people, more than fit in Sacred Heart for sure.
Wow.
I fall to my knees. I'm bawling my eyes out, nearly in the fetal position in the middle of this floor, crying and just feeling the power of the Holy Spirit through me. It's almost too much to bear.
Yeah.
And I walk out thinking, how have I turned my back on this for so long?
Right.
And once again, through music. So, I get back in my car and I'm like, okay, so what do I do from here? Where do I keep coming here? Because, I have my Catholic background.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, is this what I've been looking for? And I turn on the the radio in my car.
Mm-hmm.
And the first song that comes on my playlist is U2, I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. And so I'm like, okay, I'm still looking. And that's what led me here.
Wow. That's pretty crazy. And through all those kind of ups and downs, those hills and valleys, a couple of things that I know I definitely share in is that there were points in my life where my faith was all about emotion. Right? If I felt close to God, then my faith life was good. And if I felt like I was alone and God wasn't listening, I had terrible faith. And over a long course of time, it took me to realize that he gave me this big meat computer in my head to help balance out that emotional aspect of my heart, right? And I started remembering, oh, that's right. Faith is faith, no matter how you feel. And there's a big phrase that I love. I hear it frequently, and I just love it. Facts don't care about your feelings, right? And sometimes I have to remind myself about that it's not solely based on emotion and feeling, although we do have emotions and we do have feelings that help with the other, right? But our decision shouldn't be solely based on how we feel or our emotion. And so I've experienced those highs and lows of feeling close to God, feeling far away. You know what I noticed, Jacob? When I feel far away from God, it's not him that moved at all, right? It was always me. And it sounds very similar like in your situation, right?
Completely agree.
Yeah. And so maybe that's something that we should be mindful of as we're listening, is that if you're feeling right now kind of far away from God, I think we would both say, just from our own experience, that it's the Lord hasn't moved at all. In fact, he's ready. He's waiting. He's present. It's just we have to kind of make that step and kind of turn towards him. He's not going to follow us into sin, right? So, and that's usually when I found my life turning away from God, is when I would turn towards sin. And so while it wasn't consciously turning my back on God, I was turning towards sin, which turns your back on God, right? If you can kind of just visualize God on one side of a room, sin on the other side, which way are you facing? You're going to turn your back on one of them, right? I kind of like that analogy.
Yeah, and of course the beautiful thing is, and I can attest this has been true in every single one of my experiences, when you do turn around, his hand is always extended to you.
Absolutely. Instantly. In fact, his hand is always extended. It's whether we see it or reach out to it, right? And that's the beauty of it. There's that famous painting with Jesus standing at the door. I think we saw it during Alpha.
Yeah, they brought it up during the Alpha course, yeah.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful painting. And it's Jesus. When you look at it, Jesus is like in the doorway. I don't know that he could get any closer to being in the house without being in the house. And yet he doesn't come in, because there's no door handle on that side. It's only on the inside. And so all it takes is us to kind of open that door, to turn away from sin, to turn toward him. That's all it takes, just to turn toward him. And just like you experience, where you fall to your knees and really experience the power of God, right? And even in that, Jacob, I want to point out, even that experience, that powerful, overwhelming, and I would call it fear of the Lord. That's what that is. It's not being afraid. It's that it's
the awesomeness.
You're in his presence. So yeah, you know who you are and who you're not in that moment, right? And it doesn't even compare to what's going to happen when we go to heaven. It doesn't even compare. There are no words. There are no experiences. We have glimpses. We have insights. But can you imagine just being so... you mentioned the fetal position. It reminded me of something the other day, actually quite a few days. My 5-year-old daughter, she's getting to that age where she's really starting to become independent and do her own things. And like all I said, whatever, she's getting her own food, all these things. But the moments that I feel so close to her, the moments she wants to be close to me, like she'll come up and Dad, can I sit with you? Boom. Yeah. And she doesn't want to just sit with me. She wants to be as close to me as possible. And Jacob, I got to tell you, man, there's not a greater feeling in the world than somebody who just wants to be so close to you because they want to just be close to you. Right. And I wonder too, that feeling with God when we're kind of like that child. And when life is good, when we feel protected, when we feel like we're loved, when we feel the most of who we're supposed to be, it's when we're being like, God, just I want to be as close to you as possible. Just let me sit close to you. So I'd probably encourage anybody that's listening right now, if you're feeling far away from God, just go sit close to him. Just see what that means. Maybe you come to the Adoration Chapel and you are literally going to sit close to him, right? Because Jesus is present in the Adoration Chapel, in the Eucharist. Maybe that's what it's going to take for you to draw close. Maybe it's turning away from stuff in our lives. I've had to do that on such a daily basis, it seems, right? There's so much temptation out there. The temptation is not wrong, right? Even Jesus was tempted. Now, what do you do with that temptation? And so when we want to feel like we're the most ourselves of who we're supposed to be, it's when we draw close to the Lord. So now you're sitting at a spot, Jacob, where I noticed on your social media, you said you started really kind of making some posts that hopefully help people get inspired to start thinking about their relationship with God, right? And then I noticed you were taking a break from doing it as well, right? So what instituted kind of those things for you? Where'd that come from? Why did you start posting, and then why did you say you want to take a break?
Well, I started because I've now, I have a very complicated relationship with social media, as I think
Don't we all?
anyone who's honest with themselves would admit they do.
True.
And I felt like it was a distraction. It's a tool, and I felt like I was misusing the tool.
Gotcha.
So I wanted to correct that course, and I decided I'm going to use this tool as a mode to reach people, as a mode to not to complain about the crap going on in my life, not to seek affirmation from anyone, not to use as a vehicle for temptation or any of that,
or to even find your identity in it, right?
Exactly.
Like so many of us do.
And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to use this tool as a tool for Christ, a tool for positivity. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start making posts, maybe daily, maybe weekly, just about the messages that I feel are important to me, to others, what Christ wants people to know. Some people just need to know, hey, you're loved. It's okay. And so that was kind of my modus operandi for a while.
Sure.
And then I kind of felt like that was turning into my like how I'm getting affirmation from that. And I felt like maybe I was in some way even pushing some people away.
Sure.
Maybe coming on too strong. So I eventually decided, okay, this was good for a while. And maybe I'll come back to it, but I need to get out into the world. I need to get off this and try and touch people's lives with my hands, the hands that God gave me to do his work. That's why I want to be in healthcare right now. Because if I'm not quite talented enough to be an artist or a writer or some of these things that I wish I could be, to do something with my hands, to make something. But if I can use my hands to serve someone, then they're doing what they were meant to.
Absolutely. And I love this. I love this tension that you're bringing up about how do we best go about telling people about Jesus, right? And that struggle is such a great struggle, Jacob. It's such a great struggle. And it's hopefully a lifelong struggle of sometimes not going far enough, sometimes going too far, but finding that balance. And the only way that you get really good at it is keep doing it. It's really the only way. We get refined through that process, right? Like you're gonna continue to encounter people. I still encounter people all the time, and my overriding thought with anybody hopefully most people that I encounter outside of, and everybody who's listening to this podcast knows, outside of when I'm driving, I find it very difficult to even sometimes know that God is present when I get cut off in traffic and people are jockeying for position and all that stuff. That part I'm really trying to work on. But normally when I encounter anybody on a personal level, my overriding thought is, first of all, I hope they know Jesus, right? And the second one is, if I don't help them experience Christ, who will? In your field, very similar, right? Because the medical field can get into, literally into a doctor-patient relationship where you go to seek to be healed of some physical ailment, and the doc is there just strictly for that purpose. And it doesn't always come with, you know what? Yes, we're going to deal with that, but like, how are you doing? How is your life right now? Where else are you hurting? Not physically, but what's hurting you in your life? That part definitely has been taken out of medicine outside of, there are some Christian hospitals and doctors and everything that they do that because, like you said, they wanted to do something with their hands, and that's their gift, that's their talent to give. But there's so much more than just giving healthcare, right, in terms of physical healthcare, but they're about giving spiritual healthcare as well. And so maybe that's going to be where the Lord is leading you with that as well. And I know just from knowing you for a while now, is that anybody that comes across your path as a patient isn't just there for, in your eyes, isn't just there for care of the physical ailment, right? I'm sure there's a great tension there too with figuring that out. But that's the journey you're on right now, and it's a beautiful journey. I'm a little envious that you're at this stage, and I've long passed that stage. I'm getting to be the elder statesman, and now I'm on a different stage. But I remember being in those moments, and at the time, as I was frustrated, not getting it right. Man, I wish I would have done this there and that there. Oh, I shouldn't have. Ooh, I went too far there, or whatever. But now that I have a frame of reference and I can look back on it, I said, wow, what an amazing time I had to be alive and to just want to tell others about Jesus, however I could, however the moment let me, and however the Spirit let me, right? And that's where we find you at right now. Okay, well, we've hit the 30-minute mark, Jacob, and I feel like we're just scratching the surface, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much depth to get into with all this, really. It's impossible to touch on all of it, but
100%. But here's the good news. We have a podcast every week. So that means if you're amicable to it, love to have you on again. We can kind of do a part 2.
Absolutely.
And kind of where do we go from here? What are our outlooks on what the Lord has in store for each of us in the future? What we're excited about? What we're fearful of? I think that'd be a great part 2 if you don't mind coming back sometime.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's great. Well, and of course, we thank all of our listeners for joining us on this little bit of journey about our own kind of faith sharing. We will do a part 2 with Jacob for sure. Great guest. Awesome insights. I'm super excited to learn even more about you, Jacob. So thank you. And if you know anybody that wants to hear this or would benefit from hearing this, like, share, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. Do all that fun stuff. We appreciate you very much. And we very much look forward to seeing you next time on Happy Hour.